Okay, so hi guys, welcome back to another conspiracy video. This week we'll be talking about the strangest murders that have ever happened, and some of them are really fucking creepy. I've put a lot of research into this one particular episode. I've got like literally a notebook full of information. I just went through everything that I could find possibly on each of these cases, just so I could get the correct information out this time. I am going to leave a trigger warning here now at the beginning of this episode because I think it's vitally important to do that, because some of the stuff that I will be talking about will be very sensitive to some people, and a lot of it is gruesome and a lot of it is a lot of detail, and I just want to warn people before they watch this video that some of the stuff I will talk about might trigger them. But I will say before each thing I tell you, if this is one of the particular cases that's going to upset people. Okay, so the way I'll be doing this is pretty simple. I'm going to tell you each case, how it happened, how it was reported, and then after all of that I'm going to tell you the theories that the police come up with, that other people on the internet come up with, some of my own theories towards some of these cases. Okay, so sit back, turn your light off, maybe put some headphones in, because I'm about to tell you some of the strangest murders that have ever happened and the conspiracies behind them. Okay, so the first strange murder we'll be talking about is the Mystery Head in Pennsylvania. So it's not overly terrifying. I'm not going to put a warning on this one, but it is still pretty messed up. It is December 12th, 2014, and a child is walking home from school, going the forest way, when he stumbles across something that he doesn't quite understand. So he goes closer to the object, only to find out that it is a human head of a woman. The police soon arrive at the scene. They go over to the head, they begin to analyse it, and they realise that it is in fact real. They notice that it's in perfect condition. It doesn't look like animals have got at it. It had been there for days in the underbush, but there were still no marks on it, so they were confused. The grey hair was curled as if she were going out or she'd been prepared for her funeral. Her skin was smooth, almost porcelain-like, and where her eyes had been there were red bouncy balls that had been put in place. The only thing that was different about her was her face sagged to the right slightly, almost as if she were to have a stroke. The woman was Caucasian and she was in her 50s. So people think that they were trying to deliver this body to the morgue and maybe the head rolled off the back of the truck. But people don't believe this theory can be true because it was found so far away from the nearest road. If it had fallen off the back of the truck, it wouldn't have rolled that far. And they also say that animals couldn't have moved it because if they had done, there would have been bite marks or claw marks in the head, and the head hadn't been touched. It was still in perfect condition. So how did it get there? If it rolled as well, it would have left like branch marks, or like it would have cut the face a little bit. So it's unexplainable. It definitely didn't come off the back of a truck. I don't think so anyway. People from morgues also said about the red eye thing that that's not done. They don't do that at morgues. So if it had been on the back of a morgue truck, surely it would have the proper way of removing the eyes and putting something there instead. But it had been done in a way that they'd never seen before in all their professional history. But from the looks of the autopsy, they found that she had drugs in her system, but not the kind of drugs that most people think. It was cardiac drugs to help with heart problems. So they reckon she did die before her head had been taken off and the eyes had been removed, etc. They think that maybe she had died from a cardiac arrest. Maybe her heart had given in. So it could also still suggest that she had come from somewhere like a morgue. Another really popular theory that really freaks me out is that perhaps the head had come from the black market, and I'm sure all of you have heard of the black market before. It's notoriously known as this fucked up thing that exists in our world. It's this market where people can sell anything, really, anything that you wouldn't usually sell in shops, like hearts or organs or blood or I don't know, just really fucked up shit like that. Just disgusting things. Black magic, you could sell things for black magic to people. Just really messed up shit. They think that maybe that's where the head had come from and someone had sold it on the black market, but it doesn't explain why that head would be there. If you spend a lot of money on these products, because they are a lot of money to get, especially online or at auctions, they're a lot of money. Why would you just leave it in the middle of the woods? Why would you not take it with you unless something happened to them? Police even sometimes back up this theory, saying that perhaps it came from the black market because it was booming at this time. It was a big industry. Not that it isn't now, but it was quite big at that time. They're unsure though of whether she had died and then someone had taken her head and sold it, or whether she had been murdered and someone had sold her head and made it look like that and put the red balls in the eyes. Could you imagine that? That's a horrific thought. People also believe that if the eyes had been removed in the morgue, there's a slight chance that someone could have those eyes now. Perhaps they were sent off, like they were transported to another hospital and given to someone who needed the eyes, which is a really creepy thought to think about, because there's now someone walking around with women's eyes whose head was found in a forest by a child and no one knows how it got there. But yeah, we'll never know why the head was found there, or if it rolled off the back of a truck, or if someone had murdered her or left it there, or if it was part of the whole black market scheme. We'll never know. It's a case that will go unsolved, and it's one of the strangest murders that I've heard of. Okay, so this next one doesn't need a trigger warning, as I don't think it's that bad, but it is still quite horrific. So this is the Charles C. Morgan hitman conspiracy. It's 1977 in Arizona, and there is a man that lives there named Chuck Morris. He owns an escrow company there. He works in selling houses. On March 22nd, Chuck goes to work like normal. He then later on vanishes. It is 3 days before anyone hears from Chuck again. His wife, Ruth, is at home. She wakes up to a thud at the back door at 2 a.m. The dog's barking. She has no idea who's there. She goes down to the back door and she opens it, and Chuck is standing there. He seems quite strange compared to how he left last time. He's missing a shoe. He had one plastic handcuff around his ankle and he had one in his hands, keeping them bound together. He couldn't talk. He tried to speak, but he was unable to. His wife said, "Can you write?" And he nodded his head, so she got him a piece of paper and a pen and he began to write for her. What he wrote was, "My throat has been painted with a hallucinogenic drug, and that the drug could either drive him insane eventually or destroy his nervous system and kill him." Although I was always taught that psychedelics couldn't kill you. The only way you could overdose on a psychedelic was for it to be too much, to be sitting in the corner shaking and freaking out and seeing too much. But I didn't know you could actually die from psychedelics, and I still don't think you can. Let me know otherwise if you can, because I always assumed you couldn't. His wife then became insistent on taking him to the hospital, but he wasn't having it. He refused. He said if he went to the hospital or if he went to any sort of authority like police, they would find him and they would kill him. The entire family would die, him and his wife. So obviously that freaked her out enough for her not to do anything. So over the week she nursed him back to health in an attempt to get her husband back to the way he was before he left. Throughout the week he started to confess things that she had never heard from him before, that he thought he was a secret agent for the government and that he was doing something important for them. Throughout the week he was dropping hints until eventually his throat got better. He eventually wrote, "They took my treasury identification," and that he'd been working with them for 2 to 3 years. After the kidnapping, things went back to the way they were. He was normal, he could talk again, but he always wore a bulletproof vest just in case anything did happen to him. He'd been kidnapped once before, he wasn't taking his chances again. He also made sure he was the only one who drove his daughters to and from school in case anyone tried to do the same to them, so he feared for his family's life. Everything was fine until 2 months later, he disappeared again. Ruth, his wife, is obviously panicked. She wonders who's taken him. Is it the people he was talking about? And then 9 days later, she receives a phone call. A really strange, creepy phone call. There's a strange woman on the other line, and she begins to read her a Bible passage. What she says is, "Chuck is alright." Okay, I don't know how to say this certain passage, so Ecclesiastes, I'll put it here. 12, 1 through 8. And then she hangs up. I actually looked into this passage, and by the looks of it, it does sound like that the passage is talking about death. Tell me what you think of the passage. I'm going to read it now. Let me know what you think the passage might mean, if there's any clues in there that you might be able to figure out. Okay, so the passage reads, "Men are afraid of a high place and of terrors on the road. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it." 2 days later, from when this phone call was made, a body was discovered, and it was that of Chuck Morris. When they found him, he was wearing the same bulletproof vest that he'd worn throughout the entire weeks he was with his wife and children. He also had a bullet wound to the back of the head from his own .357 Magnum, which was beside him. With him there was also a piece of paper and writing with his handwriting. It was the address of the place that he was supposedly murdered. So why would he leave this note of the place he'd been murdered in his own handwriting? There were also sunglasses in the car that weren't his. I'm not sure how they figured that out. Maybe it wasn't the right shape for his face or it didn't fit. But there were sunglasses in the car, which means the person who had done this had been sloppy. Whether that was on purpose or not, we'll never know. They also discovered a $2 bill that had writing on either side of it. There were different codes and different things for the police to crack. Different names, different numbers, different ways, like arrows pointing to certain bits of the dollar note. What they did realise was there were several Spanish names written on the note, and they were all from A through G. Above that was the same Bible passage name that I'd said earlier that was written right above it, and it said with verses 1 to 8, which was marked by arrows that were pointing at the numbers on the serial code of the note. This is something I don't understand because I'm British. I don't understand how the notes work in America, but on the back of the bill, the signers of Declaration of Independence were numbered 1 through 7, so I don't really understand what that means. If anyone else could let me know, that'd be great. Also on the back of the note with that information was a roughly drawn map, and they attempted to figure out where this map led to. It eventually led to an area between Tuscan and Mexico, to 2 towns that were very well known for smuggling. This is the bit that gets to me because it so obviously wasn't this, but the police suggested and they all thought that it was suicide, which I don't see why he would have shot himself in the back of the head firstly. You would have to do that, and he had no room in the car. If he was in a car, he would have no room to be able to do that. I guess you could just shoot yourself in the back of the head, but you would be able to tell from the way the bullet went in, I'm assuming. Even then, why would he shoot himself when he had a bulletproof vest on? He obviously was afraid of being shot. He wouldn't just take himself out. It doesn't make much sense. He seemed pretty eager to not want to die. Even his wife said there was no possible way that he could have killed himself, and that if he had even contemplated suicide, he would have at least left a note for the daughters and his wife. He would have let them know why he'd done it. And this is coming from a woman who probably knows him better than he knows himself. A journalist also said that in all his years, he'd never seen a guy commit suicide with a bulletproof vest on. Okay, so some of the facts that we do have though is that his estate business was done in a mafia-known area. Okay, so they're starting to suggest towards maybe the mafia had a part in it. Apparently he even sold property to a well-known mafia mob. And a lot of people began to think that he was surrounding himself with a lot of danger. Could the mafia have done it? We'll never really know, but I don't think the mafia would have been as sloppy to leave behind all these clues unless they were setting someone else up. It doesn't really make any sense. I could see how it could happen though, because he was involved with that kind of business. He lived in an area where it was known for the mafia to be. He even had on the map a place where smugglers would go to smuggle things. But God knows why the mafia would want to take him out. What had he done that had pissed them off so much that they put a death sentence above his head? There is also another theory that they hired a hitman to take him out. And there is actually some evidence behind this theory. The woman that had called on the phone, the strange woman who had said the Bible passage, she called the police station again after Chuck's death. She said that her name was Green Eyes. That was her nickname that she was going to give them instead of giving them her real name. She claimed Chuck had met her at a motel just before he died and that he had a briefcase filled with thousands of dollars. He said that it would pay off the contract the mob had on his life and that he would be able to possibly pay off the hitman that was coming for him. However, we don't know if this account is honest or true because this woman might just be trying to fuck with the case. But yeah, there's still something slightly creepy and realistic about that. So people believe a hitman was put on him by the mafia, and that perhaps the hitman gave him a choice and said, you could give me even more money and I won't kill you. So obviously he's going to agree to that. He's a real estate agent, he has a lot of money, he has money to give out. So after agreeing, the hitman obviously asked him to come to the desert, which is where his body was found, to exchange the money for his life. But in the end, they reckon the hitman took him out anyway and took the money as well. So another conspiracy is the government conspiracy, which I believe could possibly be true, because I believe in all that crap where the government is conspiring against us. Okay, so people believe he was actually working undercover for the government. So the mafia thing also ties in again with this. Maybe they found out and that's the reason that they killed him. What's weird is FBI agents came to visit Ruth shortly after her husband died. They didn't tell her exactly why they were there. They opened their identifications really quickly, so she couldn't see their names and she couldn't remember who they were. They said they needed to look around the house, they were trying to find something important. They tore the house apart but never found anything, or claimed that they'd never found anything. And she never found out, even to this day, why they'd done that. Okay, so what's really strange is a journalist interviewed the FBI about Chuck. They mentioned his name, but the FBI claimed that they'd never heard of him, that they had no files on him, and they never knew of his existence. Even though they interviewed his attorney at one point, and there's proof of that. So how do you explain it? Why are the FBI trying to cover up their tracks? Did they maybe have something to do with it? A lot of people have decoded the codes on the dollar bills as well, and they think that might be related to the government. It's a very government kind of thing to leave codes somewhere for them to be able to hack, for them only to understand. Okay, so I think the government might have killed him and made it look like the mafia. They're killing two birds with one stone. They're making the mafia look bad, and they're also taking out someone who might have known some private information about the FBI. I believe this because a hitman wouldn't have been as sloppy to leave sunglasses behind. I'm sorry, but the only reason these types of people who are very smart, the mafia, the government, hitmen, they're all very smart people. The only reason they would leave behind clues like that is on purpose. Maybe they're trying to get someone else in trouble. But I just don't see why a hitman would leave behind any evidence at all. He would dispose of the body. He would dispose of all the evidence that was next to him, the note, the letters, the maps. A hitman wouldn't have been as sloppy, so I don't see how that can even be in the equation. But I can see the government trying to set up the mafia. Maybe I'm gonna get taken out for talking about this. I fucking hope not. So I honestly believe he might have found out something top secret while he was working for them in the 2 to 3 years he said he was, and maybe he knew that he'd found something they were going to kill him over, so he attempted to keep himself undercover. He attempted to wear bulletproof vests, but he was still taken and he was still murdered. Another conspiracy, which I think is highly unlikely, but it is a good conspiracy, is that he was maybe cheating and he was trying to cover up his tracks, so he made up all these unrealistic bullshit lies about being involved in the government or being involved in some other kind of conspiracy, when he was actually going out to meet other women for weeks and cheating on his wife. Which is why people can see it kind of explains the handcuffs he maybe had on him. Maybe he'd just escaped from someone's bed, I don't know. But what if Ruth, the wife, found out and she realised that he was cheating on her and she followed him, and it might have not have ended too well? What if she accidentally hurt him? What if she took him out because she was so angry that he would do that to the family, to her children? What if she accidentally killed him? Or what if she killed him purposely? Would she be capable of doing that? It still doesn't explain the notes and the codes and all the evidence that was left in the car, the sunglasses. Could she really have been smart enough to pull that off and make it look like someone else had done it? It is quite eerie to think about, but she was the only witness statements they had. Every single bit of evidence of what he did, of what he was like, came from her. Could she have really twisted that to make it look more believable that she had nothing to do with it? The last conspiracy for this case is that maybe he was just depressed. Maybe the family life was too much for him and he couldn't handle it anymore, or he was suffering from mental illness and he just gave up. He took himself into the middle of the desert, put a gun to the back of his head and ended his life. It would kind of explain why he kept leaving. Maybe he was going through manic depression, maybe he was experiencing things he didn't know he could experience, and he was in a really dark place and he needed to get away from his family so he didn't cause them any more damage. This theory actually comes from someone who was anonymous, and logically it does make a lot of sense. I just hope maybe this wasn't the way he went out, because it would be, even though it still is, it would just be tragic. That's all the evidence that they have. The case, I think, is closed now, so there'll be no continuing further with it. It is sad, and I really do, my prayers and thoughts still go out to the family that had to endure that.